But Brandon, let's move on into our final topic before we get to our Week 5 picks. And this is one that is interesting because there was an article on ESPN, kind of the same topic about the Nebraska Cornhuskers firing their AD, Sean Escort, who they just get rid of him. And the question is, and I'm going to ask you this, is did Nebraska just make Mike Riley a lame duck head coach? And before I get your answer, I want to mention something because as we were recording this podcast, the Nebraska Cornhuskers have hired a interim AD in alumni Dave Remington. And here's a kind of little snippet from Mitch Sherman of ESPN that I want to read for you. And he says, this is him on Dave Remington. "I'm not here to fire anybody. I'm just here to calm things down. He says he's not a candidate for the permanent job, but does plan to retire from the Boomer Esiason Foundation in 2 years and move back from New York to Nebraska, at which time he may be interested in working in some way with his alma mater," end quote. So the thing that I wanted to point out more specifically there is the part where he says, "I'm not here to fire anybody." Do you think that is a clean cut, you know what, take his word for it, Nebraska did not make Mike Riley a lame duck head coach?
Well, honestly, I would take his word for it.
Mm-hmm.
I would take his word for it. I know that in a lot of instances, people have said, "Oh, I'm not here to fire anybody. Oh, I'm not going to fire anybody. We're going to, make all these decisions at season's end." And you kind of know that that's their way of saying, "We'll fire him at the end of the season."
Yeah.
But I really truly don't think that he will. But here's the whole thing: in our preview of Nebraska. What was part of what we talked about?
Mike Riley's job security.
Mike Riley's job security, and the fact that they have been so mediocre for so long in terms of making making a name for themselves, one, in the Big Ten, and two, being able to have a push for the playoffs. So already this season, they've played 4 games. They're 2-2. They've shot themselves in the foot. They're not headed to no playoffs.
Not only that, you want to know what I want to point out in that 2-2? They lose to Oregon, they lose to NIU, but the 2 other wins, Arkansas State, they win 43-36. You only win by a touchdown against a team you should have blown out at home. Then in the last game they played on September 23rd, you only beat Rutgers by 10. And I don't want to take anything away from Rutgers because they've been showing strides this season as well. I believe they snapped a losing streak just two weeks ago at home. And you only win by 10 to Rutgers, a team that many Cornhusker fans were probably expecting you guys to blow out of the water. Now you go on the road coming into our home state of Illinois to play my Fighting Illini. Not saying the Illini are going to win. Last time I picked them, they got blown out by Charlie Strong and his Bulls. However, that could be another time. Like, you've lost 2, so you're 2-2, and your 2 wins have been very close games against opponents you should have won by bigger margins. So to me, that is also a red flag to look at just so far this season.
Mike Riley, in his Nebraska coaching tenure, 2015 is when it started. He went 6-7. 2016 is when things went on the up and up, and he went 9-4. Now in season 3, he already has 2 losses, 2-2 after 4 games. You take a look at Tanner Lee, their starting quarterback. He's just shy of 900 yards on the year, 7 touchdowns, but he's thrown 9 interceptions, Ricky. 9 interceptions. He's been turning the ball over like candy for the kids. It's been really, really not great from the quarterback position, and that's one of the things that's really been hurting Nebraska. That's one of the things that's been keeping other teams in the games. So I don't think, going back to your question and the title of this segment, I don't think so. With Mike Riley. I don't think they're making him a lame duck head coach. I don't think they're doing that to him. But I think something needed to change, and it now has at the AD position. They got rid of the AD. They got rid of the guy who it seemed like, it was It was not working. It was not working for him. And now I think they've clearly got someone in the interim in Remington. But when they are able to bring in the guy who's going to have the permanent job, whoever that may be, is going to take a look at everything. And this football program will certainly be one of them. How do we make this football program successful again? And how do we consistently have it 9-4 or go up to 10-3 or go, continuously progress there instead of regressions? I think people were really happy after the 9-4 season, after 6-7 in year one, to go 2-2 to start this season. That's not what fans were expecting from their Nebraska Cornhuskers. That's not what they were looking forward to. I don't think that they expected that their AD would be fired. I don't think they'd be expecting that we would be talking about this right now 4 games into the season. So it's really kind of a very, very interesting turn of events here in Nebraska. But they're not turning for the better. Only because it's now one of those teams that's in that state of flux that has not performed well. And I know that some people may say, guys, you're overreacting. You're 4 games into the season. It's still a young season. If they went on and they won every one of their games, they'd be fine. That's all fine and dandy, but you go on the road to play Illinois, and Illinois, hopefully, you gotta win that game. For Illinois' sake, won't be an easy out. And then back-to-back home games against Wisconsin and Ohio State. Then you go on the road to face a much better Purdue football team. Then you go home to face a tough Northwestern team. On the road for Minnesota, which is no easy task. On the road for Penn State, which is not easy at all. And then home against an Iowa team that shows it's got some balls. So I think that this is a really tough schedule, and things aren't going to go perfect the rest of the season.
I kind of want to say, looking at the schedule, I could see 3 wins, but I wouldn't be surprised if, and I don't want Cornhusker fans to get mad at me, I don't think this is going to happen. I wouldn't be surprised if the Cornhuskers don't win another game this season. Only because, the 3 games that I think you can win, Illinois, Purdue, Minnesota, the only reasons why I say I wouldn't be surprised if they lost those, they're all on the road. They're all on the road, and so far, your only road game, you go out and you lose. Yes, it was a close game, 42-35, but you still lose to Oregon on the road. Here's something that I find interesting, and this is from an article on ESPN, where apparently the Nebraska administrative leadership met with the football coaching staff on Thursday to deliver the news about AD Sean Eichhorst has been fired. University System President Hank Bounds and Chancellor Ronnie Green told the entire staff at once, that is, except third-year head coach Mike Riley. He was informed separately. I look at that, and I kind of, I'm trying to read through the lines here with that. Why was he informed separately? You could look on one side and say, you know what? He's the head coach. The head coach should be informed separately. It should be him, the president, the chancellor. They're informed. Then you go and inform the rest of the team. However, how it's phrased in ordering makes it sound that the coaching staff was addressed, then Mike Riley was addressed. And there could be the other side of, we're going to address the coaching staff, then we're going to address Mike Riley separately, because on top of telling him that we've fired the AD, we want to lay down some, this is what you need to do to keep your job. Because so far through 4 games, if I'm a Nebraska Cornhusker fan, I'm not excited with 2-2, and I am definitely not excited with the close games against Arkansas State and Rutgers. Games that should have been bigger wins. I know you got the win, but those games should have been bigger wins. And I'm kind of sitting here thinking that Mike Riley will end up being a lame duck head coach. I think whatever AD they bring in, I don't think he gets fired this year. I don't think he gets fired this year, end of this year. He will be the head coach for the Nebraska Cornhuskers starting in the 2018 season. However, next year becomes the year where he's got to, if this team falters next year, that new AD, depending on who it is, if it's someone who has a close tie with the organization already, he may not. That's another thing that plays in. Who are they going to hire for the long-term AD? However, whenever we talk about new owner coming in, new AD coming in, new anybody coming into an organization, we always look at that head coach and we go, could it be their time to go? Could it be the new ownership? Or even like on the onside kick, Mark and I talk about it in the coaching to quarterback. New head coach comes in, I want my guy, quarterback X, you're gone. I am bringing in my own guy. Who says the AD that they bring in doesn't want to do that? And the track record for Mike Riley, except for last year was the only winning record. I know this is his third year, but 6-7, 9-4, and then right now 2-2 isn't that swimmingly. And I mean, even at Oregon State, he was his last year at Oregon State after 9-4, 7-6. He had a 5-7 season, 2-7 overall. Wasn't the highest of notes. I know he was 93 and 80 overall in his tenure with the Beavers, but I kind of have a feeling that they're going to bring someone in, and after next season, that AD is going to go, "Hey, Mike, we're gonna move on, and we're gonna bring in my guy." He's not going to say it exactly like that, but that's basically what it's going to be.
Well, let me go back to the very beginning where you started and try and unpack a little bit of that. So
I rambled a bit.
So no. That's totally okay. I've done the same thing. So to start off with, is it weird that they address the staff separately from the coach? No. I don't think so at all, especially working within the college athletics at the D2 level. That is not strange to me, only because the head coach is one, because you want to say some other things to the head coach probably
that you don't want to say to the rest of the staff.
That you don't necessarily want to say to the rest of the staff, or that they necessarily need to hear.
Yeah.
So that is not strange. It's not uncommon. But I do think that it's always interesting. You get a new athletic director in there. What they're going to want to do is they're going to want to assess everything. And we're not just talking football here. They're going to be assessing every single
all the sports
piece of the department. But we talk football because of this segment and because of what our podcast is all about. And football is the moneymaker at these schools. Football and basketball typically are. So,
football makes the money that gets spread out to all the other programs. Basically.
So we look at football and we talk about where this program is going. That's what the athletic director and that's what the head coach Mike Riley will be talking about. And the athletic director could very much like Mike Riley and think that this guy can definitely do it and give him some time to be able to produce. But you're right. You're right on. The athletic director a lot of times comes in, meets with the head coach, hasn't liked what the head coach has done in the past, hasn't liked what he's done with recruiting, hasn't liked what he's done here, and is like, I've got guys in mind already of who I want to have come in. You're out. Thank you for your time. You're out. And I'm bringing in someone who I believe is going to be able to do the job. But it's not necessarily always going to work like that. He could very much like Riley, whoever it is that comes in at the AD position. And certainly, if he does get rid of him, he could also give him a little bit of time until he says no more.
Yeah. Because
a lot of times what I've seen and what I think we've seen is that some of these things don't move very quickly. There are so many coaches that have not been successful that they still get 2-3 years to get something going. I mean, that's pretty standard, I think. Okay, you get your recruits in there, you get them going, you get them into the, second, third year. We should be seeing your recruits and what they're able to be doing. And if I'm not liking what I'm seeing now, okay, we gave you the 2-3 year window. Thanks a lot, but no thanks anymore. No, we are going to go in a different direction. So That could definitely happen, but Riley still needs a little bit more time. He's in year 3. He didn't do well year 1. Is a lot of times year 1 is not expected to do well, 6 and 7, but he did well in year 2, and that's the biggest thing. He did well in year 2.
Winning record in year 2.
Winning record, which means now if there's a losing record in year 3 and you go backwards, people are going to be looking and going, what's going on here? What's with this? You don't do well, you do well, you don't do well. Where's this pattern heading? I think that's the biggest thing, is that if you were to go 6 and 7, then 9 and 4, then 10 and 3, then 9 and 4, then 10 and 3. I mean, it's kind of like your Kevin Sumlin, 8 and 5, 8 and 5, 8 and 5. But at least this is a winning. This is certainly not that 8 and 5 is not a winning record, but this is a 10 and 3, a 9 and 4 type of thing. And I'm not saying that you're going to win with that, but you certainly put yourself in a much better position. You're definitely going to a decent bowl game. All those types of things, which do mean things for teams, because that means more money. But if you go backwards, that's really tough. That's really tough, because then it's like, well, what's wrong? You just had a 9 and 4 season. How are you now going backwards again?
And here's the thing I think about, going back to what you kind of mentioned with myself. Like you were saying, like it's not necessarily strange to have the 2 separate meetings. The thing we have to think about, and we're not going to be able to answer it because neither I or you were in the room. Neither you were in the room, unless you're watching this from Nebraska, which, hey, welcome in. But most people are not in the room for this. The question is, what kind of a conversation was had between the president, the chancellor, and Mike Riley? Like I said, could have gone 2 ways. Option A, the better option of, hey, you know what? We're letting the AD go. Just wanted to let you know. And they basically talked to him like a civil human being. Hey, this is kind of the steps moving forward. We wanted to let you in on the process, let you know stuff that obviously we're not going to know. Let the rest of the coaching staff know. Or it could have went the other way, which I'm hoping it didn't for Mike Riley's sense, because you've been in those shoes many a times and it's not a good position to be in. But it could have been the, hey, just wanted to let you know, we're letting the AD go. What's going on? What's going on with this team? Like we had a good year last year. This year, the team, close games. Talk to me, Mike. What is going on? That conversation where it's not really pressing, but it's not that positive conversation that you leave all cheery, ready to go out there and win more games. It depends on what kind of a conversation happened. We won't know that, but that is the key moving forward to this question. I really think that, in my opinion, after next season, there is a really good chance that, unless it's like you make a playoff or you go 10 wins, there's a good chance Mike Riley could be fired after his 4th year at Nebraska. New AD comes in for next year. You being Mike Riley will start your 4th season. That's usually the year where it's like you've had those 3 years to bring in the recruits and kind of it is now your team, your culture here at the school. And next year will be kind of the measuring stick for the new AD of, do I keep this guy or do I get rid of him?
It's so important to have a good rest of this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, it really is.
We can jump ahead. We can speculate.
It's so important to have a good competitive rest of this year. But it will be important to have a good year next year. If you're Mike Riley, if you're still here at the end of the season, which I believe you will be, it's so important then to really bring it all together next year and be competitive and try and be up there with the Wisconsins. And then you can compete with the Michigans, the Penn States, the Ohio States. Until you do that, it doesn't mean anything. It truly doesn't. Well,
and this is where I'm going to turn it on to you guys. Let us know what you guys think down below. Do you think getting rid of the AD will make Mike Riley a lame duck head coach? Do you think he's fired at the end of this year? Do you think he's fired at the end of next year? Do you think he survives this? New AD comes in, likes what Mike Riley's doing. He stays on as Nebraska's head coach for some time after next year. Let us know down below in the comment section.